a subconscious error in thinking that leads to irrational decision-making. Excellent choice. Cognitive bias is the right answer. What does the location of allocation of behavior among different options altered by constraints of instrumental conditioning procedure? You're right. Request curve is the correct answer. A phenomenon whereby exposure to one stimulus influences a response to a subsequent stimulus without conscious guidance or intention. Correct. Priming is the right answer. The tendency to process information by looking for or interpreting information that is consistent with one's existing beliefs. Well picked. Confirmation bias is the correct answer. The subfield of economics that applies psychological insights into human behavior and to explain economic decision-making. Sharp thinking. Behavioral economics is the right choice. Max believes his sense of direction is excellent and refuses to ask for directions. Which overconfidence is he showing? Correct response. Overestimation is the most accurate answer. The tendency to search for information that supports our preconceptions and to ignore or distort contradictory evidence. You chose confirmation bias, and it is correct. The irrational ways that we process information in make decisions using our own perspective and incomplete information. Smart move. Cognitive biases is an accurate answer. The dash are quick exits between advisor-client that do not allow for analysis, understanding, and detection of needs. Perfect. Shortcuts is the correct choice. Emotional bias that causes individuals to value an owned object higher, often irrationally, than its market value. Great thinking. Endowment effect is the right choice. Depending on the way the information is presented, we will choose the option that best suits us, referring to. Nicely done. Preferences is a solid answer. This technique breaks the bias of settling for a smaller current reward than expecting a larger future reward. Solid response. Present bias is a valid choice. Its use is key to the development of our daily relationships as it helps us maintain effective communication. Nice work. You chose linguistic intelligence, and it is correct. With this technique, we encourage the client to make their best effort since their credit is about to expire. Clear logic. Your choice gradient meta effect is sound and 100% true. Searching online for the answer to a statement that your friend made to prove that your point was right. Good job. Your answer confirmation bias works well here. 75% of drivers believe that they are above average. Which type of overconfidence is this an example of? Right choice. Overplacement is the best answer. Investing in low return, guaranteed investments over more promising investments that carry higher risk. Great job. Loss aversion is the accurate answer. Suggests that instrumental activity is kept at a high level by restricting access to the reinforcer. Exactly. Response deprivation hypothesis makes sense and it is right choice. Certain reinforcers are linked, and affecting the price of one affects the consumption of the other. Right again. Linked to complementary commodity is a valid answer.
Argues that you can use a high probability response as a reinforcer of a low probability response. Smart pick. Primark principle is the correct choice. The availability of substitutes increases the sensitivity of the original item to higher prices. Excellent. Availability of substitute is a brilliant choice. This technique consists of generating positive emotions in the client to obtain kind responses.
Good thinking. Reciprocity is the right answer.
The tendency to regard losses as considerably more important than gains of comparable magnitude.
On track. Loss aversion is the correct answer. What is the term for continuing with a decision because of the time or money already invested? Nice selection. The sunk cost fallacy is the correct and valid answer.
All of the following are types of values that can impact your financial decisions, except dash. Bravo! Spiritual values is the answer.
Which of these loss aversion strategies is being used in the Hulu ad?
Well-reasoned. Free trials and samples is the correct choice.
Which step requires you to gather information about alternative choices you could make? Well done. Search is the right choice.
According to a 2018 survey, what percentage of US teens say they are Instagram users?
You got it. Your choice 72 is right.
Over 70% of people believe they are above average drivers. This is an example of
strong choice. A overconfidence bias is the right answer.
Based on the belief that most people make logical, rational decisions with their money.
Valid point. Traditional economics is true.
Which brands below are now able to sell items directly from within the Instagram app?
You got it. Your choice Kylie Cosmetics and Adidas is right.
Watch the video and tell me how many times players wearing white pass the basketball.
Sharp thinking. 15 is the right choice. Even though you're full, you keep eating because the meal was expensive. Example is? Valid point. The sunk cost fallacy is true.
What is the name of the tendency to assign more value to the things we already own?
Well done. The endowment effect is the right choice.
Overconfidence bias may lead the majority of Americans to think that they are dash.
Good job. Your answer above average drivers works well here.
Being worried about missing out on a party that all of your friends are going to. Perfect. Fear of missing out is the correct choice.
Considers that a broad range of activities are always available to an individual.
Bravo. Response allocation is the answer.
The use of social media platforms and websites to promote a product or service.
Well reasoned. Social media marketing is the correct choice.
The tendency to conform to the behaviors and beliefs of the people around you.
Solid response. Herd mentality is a valid choice. What is the term for refusing to sell something for more than we paid for it?
Correct. The endowment effect is the right answer.
An increase in price has less of an effect at low prices than at high prices.
Nice work. You chose price range, and it is correct.
What is the term for separating money into imaginary categories in our mind?
On track, mental accounting is the correct answer.
When a person believes they are better at something than they actually are.
Well picked. Overconfidence bias is the correct answer.
People under the age of 30 make up dash of all those who experience FOMO.
Excellent. 56% is a brilliant choice.
A subconscious error in thinking that leads to irrational decision-making.
Smart move. Cognitive bias is an accurate answer.
Investments of time, effort, and money that cannot be recovered are dash.
Nice selection. Sunk costs is the correct and valid answer.
When a person has an exaggerated certainty that an answer is correct.
Great job. Over-precision is the accurate answer.
The tendency to prefer avoiding losses to acquiring equivalent gains.
You chose loss aversion, and it is correct.
The tendency people have to be more confident in their own abilities.
Excellent choice. Overconfidence bias is the right answer.
What is the term for assigning more value to things we already own? You're right. The endowment effect is the correct answer.
Research shows that dash of people make purchases because of FOMO.
Right choice. 60% is the best answer.
All of the following are types of overconfidence bias except a dash.
Good thinking. Overgeneralization is the right answer.
What is the term for feeling the need to get our money's worth? Sa. Nicely done. The sunk cost fallacy is a solid answer. Which of the following loss aversion strategies is this at using? Right again. Protect people from loss is a valid answer. It is when the client takes a loss into account, more than a gain.
Correct response. Loss aversion is the most accurate answer.
Which step requires you to evaluate the results of your choice?
Great thinking. Study is the right choice.
When a person mistakenly believes they are better than others.
Smart pick. Overplacement is the correct choice.
Costs that have already been incurred and cannot be recovered.
Strong choice. Sunk costs is the right answer.
Which step requires you to consider your opportunity costs?
Clear logic. Your choice sift is sound and 100% true.
The tendency to put more value on things you already own. Exactly. Endowment effect makes sense, and it is right choice.
Separating money into imaginary categories in your mind.
Right again. Mental accounting is a valid answer.
What percentage of people make purchases due to FOMO?
Excellent. 60% is a brilliant choice. The Bean Rock game caused us to differentiate between.
Correct response. Needs and wants is the most accurate answer.
Which step requires you to identify the need or want?
Great job. Specify is the accurate answer.
What are the top 2 causes of most people's FOMO?
strong choice. Events, parties, and travel is the right answer.
Which step requires you to act on your choice?
You chose select, and it is correct.
What is the name of Richard Thaler's research? Duh. Great thinking. Behavioral economics is the right choice.
What is Mrs. Hagen's favorite animal?
On track. Panda is the correct answer.
What year was Mrs. Hagen born?
Clear logic. Your choice 1991 is sound and 100% true.
What does FOMO stand for?
Valid point. Fear of missing out is true.
Name the color blue.
Solid response. Red is a valid choice.
Bliss point.
You're right. Response allocation is the correct answer. How you will get all these quiz questions in PDF books format.
Good thinking. Contact Narayan Changder is the right answer.